Once your layers are complete, you are ready to print. You're going to need to get a printmaking kit, have some printmaking colors, a carving tool, paper, and all of your layers, and also a printing plate. So the rule is that you're always going to print the color before you carve the color. Now, if you have white in your design, you're not going to print white first because your paper is already white. So if you have white in your design, you'll start with carving. If you do not have white, you'll start with printing. Notice that I lined up my tracing paper in the top right-hand corner, and I placed my tracing paper face down and then used a pencil to rub the graphite onto my printing block. Now I'm going to use a carving tool to carve out everything that is graphite pencil. So everything that is dark on my plate, I'm going to carve that out, because I don't want that to print any color, because I want to leave those parts the white of the paper. So I'm loading my small carving tool. All you have to do is loosen the top and then load the blade in. And now I'm going to very carefully start to carve out everything in my design that is dark, all the graphite pencil marks that have been left onto the block. Be careful not to smudge while you're carving. It can get tricky if you smudge to know what it is that you're supposed to carve out. You do not have to carve very deep, just deep enough that you're removing the graphite pencil. So I'm going to carve out everything that I want to keep white in my design. Once I've carved it off, I want to spray my block and just wipe it with a paper towel just to remove extra graphite. It's okay if you're still seeing graphite on the block. Now I'm ready to print. I'm going to start by printing my first color, which is yellow. So I'm going to always print the color before I carve the color. So I've already carved out my white, so now I'm going to print my next color, which is the color yellow. You always want to custom mix colors. Even though I want my color to be yellow, I don't want to use the yellow straight out of the tube, because I want to make my yellow custom mix. I want to make it more unique. So even if you're just adding a little bit of white to the color to tweak it, you should always tweak your colors slightly, not use them straight out of the tube. Once I have my color mixed, and you want to make sure you're mixing enough color that you're going to be able to create a total of 4 prints. I'm going to load up my brayer. I did not use all the ink on the brayer. You just want a thin layer of ink that's going to cover all sides of the brayer. You want to save some of that ink on your printing plate for your other prints. So notice that I'm rolling ink over the entire plate. I used a thin layer so that I'm not getting ink into the parts that I scratched out. I'm going to load my plate onto my registration frame, and now I'm going to burnish using the burnishing tool. You want to burnish more than you think you need to. That's going to force the ink into the paper. And as you can see, everything was printed except for what I wanted to keep white. Now you're going to repeat that process for your other 2 pieces of white paper, and you're going to print also on the front of your folder. After you're done printing, you need to wash and dry your printing block and your printing plate and brayer. Make sure everything is not only clean, but also dry before you start carving again. Now that everything is clean and I've made my 3 yellow prints, and I've also printed on my folder, now I'm ready to carve out the color. So remember, you always print the color, then carve it out. So because I just printed yellow, now I'm going to carve out yellow. I'm going to line up my yellow layer in the same corner. I'm going to transfer my yellow layer to my block, and now I'm going to carve out everything that I want to keep yellow in my design. So again, you print the color and then you carve the color. The biggest mistake that students often make is that they carve the color before they print it, and then there's no going back. You can't go back and add that back in once it's been carved. Now that I've carved out everything that is yellow, I'm going to print my next color. So my next color is light blue, but I'm actually going to make this an ombre fade. So I'm going to use white and a couple different kinds of blue, And then what I want to do to make an ombre fade, so if you've got some sort of transition, color transition, you're going to ink up half of your plate with your first color, and then you're going to ink up half of your plate with your second color. So because I want to transition from light blue to dark blue, half of my printing plate is going to be a light blue mixture. Notice I'm still custom mixing my colors. I'm not using the colors straight out of the tube. So I'm going to mix up my light blue on one side of my printing plate. And then on the other side of my printing plate, I'm going to mix up my dark blue. So notice how half of my printing plate has my light value and half of my printing plate has my dark value. You can also do two different colors. It doesn't have to be the same color. Now I'm gonna roll the ink. Again, I'm not using all the ink. I'm saving some of it for my other colors or for my other pieces of paper. I'm gonna put a thin layer until I've got my brayer completely covered, about half one color, half another color. And then I'm gonna roll it onto my plate. I want my dark blue at the top and my light blue at the bottom. And the more you kind of roll over it, the more it'll blend in the middle. Now I'm gonna put it in my registration frame, and I'm gonna print right on top of my yellow layer. And because I've carved out everything that I wanna keep yellow in my design, when I print the blue over top, the blue will not cover the parts of my design that I wanna keep yellow because I carved that out. So I'm gonna repeat this process for my other two pieces of white paper, and I'm also gonna print on top of my folder. Then again, you wanna make sure that you wash and dry everything before you move on to the next step. So now that I've printed my light blue, now I'm gonna transfer my light blue layer to my block and carve it out. Again, you always print the color before you carve the color out. So I printed my light blue. Now it's time to carve my light blue out of my block. Once I've carved everything that I want to keep light blue out of my block, I will be ready to print my next color. So now that I have carved out my light blue, I'm going to print my next color, which is my color green. Again, I'm going to custom mix my green. I'm not going to use the green straight out of the tube. I want to customize it by adding some yellow and also some white. Once I've got my green mixed up, I'm now going to print my green over the entire block. It's not going to cover the parts that I want to keep blue because I've just carved that out. I've got my thin layer of green, and I'm going to print the entire block. Now, sometimes students think it's a mistake when you start to see some of those little scrape marks up at the top, but actually that gives your print some handmade character. You don't want this to look absolutely perfect like a machine printed it. You want it to look like you hand carved it. It also helps create some color unity when you have little bits and pieces of the color showing through in other areas. So don't think that that's a mistake if you have some carved out areas still printing that color. Notice that I've printed my green on all three pieces of white paper, and I've also printed it on my folder. And then of course, you're gonna go and wash and dry all of your printing supplies. So the next step, now that I've printed my green, of course, now I need to transfer my green layer to my block, and then I need to carve out everything that I wanna keep green. Basically, I'm only gonna leave the parts of my block sticking up that I want printed black. Since black is my last color that I'm gonna be printing, I wanna make sure that I'm removing everything on my block that I don't want covered with black. Once I've got that carved out, my last step is to print my black. Now notice that I'm even custom color mixing my black. I'm gonna put a little bit of purple in that black just to give it a little bit of dimension so it's not just all flat black. And then my last step is just to use my brayer, get a thin layer of ink over top of my brayer, and then I'm gonna ink my last color, which is black. See how the black only covered the little last parts of the green to add some shading. So of course I'm going to print on my other 3 pieces of paper and my folder, and then I'm done. When you're finished, you will have 3 finished prints plus you've printed on the cover of your folder. The last step is to put your prints in order of your best print to your least best print. And then you're gonna give your prints a title on the left-hand side. All of your prints should have the same title. So I'm labeling mine Blooming Saguaro. In the middle, you're gonna label your prints with a fraction, a number. Your best print will be 1/3. Your second best print is 2/3. And your third best print is 3/3. And then on the right-hand side, you're gonna sign your name. The last thing to do is just to put your title at the top of your folder, and at the bottom of your folder, you're gonna sign your name. And that's it. You'll have 3 completed prints in your edition, plus a folder with your print as well.